two Abdullahs, Abdullah Ain, which you have the two disbelieving servants of Allah, but we are still servants of Allah, right? You can never get rid of that connection we have to Allah. Somehow Allah is always going to be in our lives. Allah is a big part of our lives, especially being activists and talking about Islam. So today we're going to try something different. What we're going to do is we're going to take calls. And what we've chosen as a topic, what we're going to focus on is the Quran preservation, and specifically what happened with Yasir Qadhi and his latest video that he uploaded. Abdullah Gondal, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me once again on your show. I'm actually very excited because this is something we've never done before. So like you said, we're going to be talking about most of the Quran preservation, the Yasir Qadhi live stream that shook a few people. And as we talk and we discuss, like we'll also be taking your calls along with you, with us, and we'll be answering questions and see how it goes from there. So Samir, without further ado, let's get into it.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
What happened to your hair?
Oh, so summer's starting and it was just too hot, man. Like it's too itchy. So I was like, this is a hassle to deal with.
Yeah. You didn't see Shaitan and your hair fell out or something like that?
No. I went to Umrah, you know, there was 8 Umrah, virtual Umrahs.
All right. And I think this is kind of cool that people are saying get a real job.
Absolutely, yeah.
We do have real jobs. Why do you think we're doing this in the evening? All right. This is hilarious. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna get into the clip, and let's get to it. Let's see what happened, and then we'll take, like you said, we'll take some calls. Okay.
So one of the brothers, he did something again unethical. He was expelled from the list, and the list was basically banned because of that, stopped because of that. He couldn't refute to my argument, so he sent it to one of your madkhalis in England. And so then, of course, this madkhali gave it to the other one, and so obviously, everything, all whatever broke loose. But again, this was not something I brought up in public, and I would never bring it up in public. And I don't think it is wise to bring it up in public. Every single student of knowledge knows, who studies Ulum al-Quran, that the most difficult topics are ahruf and qira'at, and the concept of ahruf and the reality of ahruf, and the relationship of the Uthmanic Mus'haf with the ahruf, and the preservation of the ahruf. Is it 1? Is it 3? Is it 7? And the relationship of the qira'at to the ahruf. This is a topic that when you're the beginning student of knowledge, you're like, what is all of this going on here? When you go a little bit more, you learn to simply memorize what your teachers say and regurgitate it out, and you don't fully comprehend. When you do a deep dive is when things get very, very awkward and difficult. And this isn't new. This is from the time of the Sahaba. In the Sahih or the Hasan hadith of Ubay bin Ka'b, the hadith of the ahruf, that when the Prophet mentioned the issue of ahruf, and that there are different ahruf and whatnot, this is in the version of Muslim Imam Ahmad. Ubay bin Ka'b says, authentic hadith, فَدَخَلَ فِي نَفْسِي شَكٍّ. In my heart, a doubt came that I hadn't had about Islam since the days of Jahiliyyah. This is not a joke, brothers and sisters. The issue of ahruf and qira'at caused confusion to somebody whom the Prophet said, if you want to listen to the Quran directly, listen to Ubay. Ubay is not some even average Sahabi. He is the Qari of the Quran. He is the master. He is who he is. And he goes, فَدَخَلْ فِي نَفْسِي شَكٍّ. What is all of this stuff? And the Prophet put his hand, and then he goes, it all went away. Now, for the first time, I'm telling you.
I just want to pause there for 1 second because I think it's so interesting. First of all, whose side is Yasir Qadhi on? Is he on our side? Oh, you're muted. Unmute your microphone.
Exactly. Like the way he's phrasing it, like, please just don't tell this to the people. Everybody who studies this stuff knows there's too many holes in this. Yeah. It's not wise to go deep into it. But why is this a problem, right? The issue is multi-layered, where it has the obvious historical backdrop of, is the Quran actually preserved word to word how it came out from Muhammad's mouth? Then there's the other issue, the theological issue, which is very troubling, where is the Quran Allah's literal speech, the issue of kalam, right? And the issue is if Quran is Allah's literal spoken word, and then it was sent down to Lawh Mahfuz first, and then from there the Quran was revealed to Muhammad. And apparently Lawh Mahfuz has a copy of the same Quran we have now. So one begs the question that all these missing verses, abrogated verses, and these variants that and ahruf, are they all part of that preserved tablet in heaven? Did Allah recite them all in those different 7 or 10 ways? And also, when those verses were cancelled or abrogated, did they unbecome the speech of Allah? Or does Allah have a preliminary draft in heaven, and then there's a final draft, and that corresponds with the final Quran we have now after all of its verses being taken out in the history of compilation? So that's the backdrop, because the theological problems with this is quite severe. And this, like he will say after a while too, that 14 centuries, best of the best ulama could not resolve this problem.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah. So I just want to say one thing, then I'll continue the clip, which I thought was very interesting. It's like, I have a problem. I have some doubts with this issue. Let me put my hand on your chest. There you go. And all the problems went away. It reminds me of an issue that the Shias have with Abu Huraira.
his memory was weak, and
His memory was weak.
he put a chadar on him.
Yes, the Prophet put a cloak on him and made dua, and then suddenly all the problems were solved. But of course, who knows if that's even a valid hadith?
Yeah.
But like, it's funny though. Like Shias are like, yeah, he had bad memory. Like he even admits it, right? But like Prophet like put a cloak on him and solved the problem. It's not like, you know, Prophet explained to him and Prophet just touched him. Problem was solved. So yeah, should I continue?
Yeah.
What was the crisis? I mentioned it, referenced it, but I never explicitly said it. Why didn't I say it? Because it should not be said in public. But unfortunately, these brothers, because they released the emails, so then I have to then get it. This was the issue. That the issue of ahruf and preservation and qira'at and relationships between them, these are very, very difficult issues. And the most advanced of our scholars, they're not quite fully certain how to solve all of the unanswered questions in there. And by the way, this is now a well-known open secret amongst many Muslim graduate students and academics around the world. And this is well-known. Traditional understandings of ahruf and qira'at cannot answer some of these pressing questions that are now being poked by our people outside of, by our academics, by their academics outside of the faith tradition. You see, in a Muslim environment, there's always some respect that we have for the Quran. We should. In a Muslim environment, we'll press a little bit and then we'll say, okay, khalas, sami'na wa ata'na. And that's great, alhamdulillah. When you go to...
Okay. I'm going to stop again. What do you think about what he's saying about Muslim academics versus Western academics? Like, what is he, what they, I thought this was too hilarious. We had to stop here and talk about this.
Well, the one of the things I notice constantly is because of the dogma and the belief Muslims have towards the Quran, they have an inherent bias that this is the perfect word of God. So that bias normally shuts down a lot of doors that might lead you to doubt or critically analyze the book or the text. So when a Muslim might look at it, he's looking through, like one of Hassan Radwan's quote is, he's looking through the lens of belief. So he won't see the Quran as a book, he'll see it as a speech of God. Whereas a certain person who's not associated with the faith has no biases, or at least no inclinations toward it. He will see it from, let's say, a more neutral perspective, and he can exercise his intellect in a way to analyze it better. Which we all skip the Muslim eye due to that belief lens. Yeah,
we all have biases and definitely all have different perspectives, but like he doesn't have a bias in regard to having to believe that it's from God. He has a freedom to have both possibilities. Yes, it's from God. Yes, it's not from God. Kind of like when I was Muslim, I was more inclined towards evolution, this and that, not true because Harun Yahya. now I'm open-minded because it doesn't matter whether evolution is true or not. It doesn't affect me. I can take both possibilities. And if you're a non-Muslim academic, it makes no difference to you whether Islam is true or false. I mean, there's actually academics like Marjin Van Putten, who it's funny. There's a tweet yesterday or today that was pointed out to me where Muslims are using his work to prove that some of the other theories that are out there, for example, the Petra theory, are a little bit way out and not well attested to. They're using his work to kind of claim triumph, but they're not quoting him, for example. So definitely that, if you're a non-Muslim, you can actually be writing in favor of Islam or against Islam. You don't care. It's not about Islam. It's about the evidence and the where the evidence leads. And that's what Yasir Qadhi is going to say, right? So I'm just going to continue for a minute more just to kind of nail this point home. He's saying that Muslim academics, because they respect the Quran, they stop at a certain point. They're like, yeah, this is it.
Academia, they don't have that red line. And they're going to just, the famous story of the emperor with no clothes. They're going to just point out, no, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not true, and this and that. And they'll bring issues, which I'm not going to mention exclusively, that are true because they're in your own books. They're not inventing anything new. They'll bring you riwayat and they'll bring you athar, and then you add to that very well-known issues of, I don't even want to be explicit. Then you bring on top of that makhtutat, and then. And it's very clear to you and to every single very advanced student and specialist that the standard narrative has holes in it. That's what I'm going to say. The standard narrative does not answer some very pressing questions. Okay? This is what I'm going to say.
Okay, before we get to the next one, just let's stop there again and let's talk about this. The standard narrative has holes in it. When we made our videos, I made one on the Sana manuscript, you made one on Quran preservation. A certain individual, who I'm not going to name, came to us and made it sound like what we're saying is so stupid, Muslim guy. And you guys think you this and that, and the standard traditional narrative is well attested, and it's basically academic. Yasir Qadhi is poking so many holes into but the thing is, why do you think he's doing this? Why is he telling everybody this?
I've noticed this one trend in him, and the more time has progressed, this has come up more and more, that Yasir Qadhi keeps saying that if he says something, he doesn't sugarcoat it, and he says that I care for the truth and I make sure it's factual. And one of the reasons why I feel that he didn't want to go deeper into this topic on that live stream with hijab was because he couldn't help himself from holding this information back. I've honestly noticed that, and he doesn't shy away from criticizing. Like, even if you read watch some of his seerah things, like he straight up bluntly says that many things in Muhammad and his life from a secular perspective are absurd and don't make him look good. Right, so I feel that he's an academic at heart, and one of the points he raised in most of his live stream was that the Dawah space is being dominated by these characters who are thriving off of this refutation and takfir and this culture, and these are frankly the Madkhali style. And I agree with him too with that as well. The other thing I wanted to point out was about Muslim scholars is Muslim scholars have known about these holes and the problems with this narrative for 14 centuries, and we are not making this up. This is literally found in your books. I can name a few books off the top of my head, like Suyuti's Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran, Al-Fahrist, then we'll talk about that, Kitab al-Masahif. They all encompass a lot of variants. Oh, well, we'll keep going, but Muslim scholars know about this. They purposefully keep this underground because it completely rips apart the miraculous claim that the Quran is preserved, and just it muddles out its allure.
Yeah, and he started off by saying Ubay ibn Ka'b, so he actually went all the way back to the companions that had problems. And what I think as well is that what he's doing is he's playing the long game. He's doing a Hamza Soitis here. Like, basically, when everybody was saying scientific miracles, people were all happy, and people were converting. Zakir Naik was convincing large numbers of people with this narrative. And then all of a sudden, almost unnoticeably, there was pushback. And the people that were at the front of the game, the people on the front lines, people like Hamza Sotis noticed that something was happening, and people with atheists and Christians too, mainly atheists, were refuting Hamza Sotis. Like, he wrote a book about embryology in the Quran, and it was completely debunked. There was a book, a response book written by two atheists called Embryology in the Quran, Much Ado About Nothing. I read this book when I was doubting Islam. I read this book when I was doubting, in the doubting stages, and it completely ripped apart Hamza Sotis's book on embryology. And so what happened is Hamza, he took the noble path, and he admitted it, and he's like, okay, I'm taking back my book. He actually pulled back his book and admitted that his arguments were not strong. So, but why would Hamza Sotis do this? Why would Hamza Sotis admit? And he even went and he made a big video, there's no scientific miracles in the Quran. Because Hamza is realizing that this is doing more damage than good now. Muslims are spreading a claim that is being debunked like crazy. And what's happening is it's actually causing people to doubt Islam. So Hamza is like, okay, we need to come up with a new approach now. We need, as Dawah guys, we need to fix this problem fast. And what are we going to do? We're going to take it on its head. We're going to say, forget the scientific miracles. We're going to find something else. I think this is what Yasir Qadhi is doing. He's, like he said, I don't know if it's in this clip or not, but he said that there's been emails and like academics on Twitter, and he's in academia. He's at Yale, right? For God's sake, the guy talks to actual professors all the time. He's not one of these like Mohammed Hijab style characters that doesn't engage with academia, who doesn't know what's going on outside of the masjid, basically, right? The masjid and the street. He knows what's going on in places of higher learning. And in places of higher learning, that's where it starts. And then it gets, distributed among the masses as well, eventually, right? So he's basically, I think, calling it out now because he doesn't want to get to the point where people start poking holes in this. Like, it's kind of like, if you know something is wrong in your house, you're gonna deal with it before someone else deals with it. You're gonna fix the problem. Like, if your son is stealing or something like that, you don't want the police to come and get involved, and so you talk to your son and you deal with. So he's basically, in a way, he's airing out the dirty laundry, but he's like, I'm taking ownership. We know this is the issue, and I'm gonna be honest about it. And that way, it looks like he's coming from a place of strength. Now, the people that are very dogmatic, they're like running around with their heads cut off, like, this guy's a fitna, this guy's causing problems for Islam. But I personally think he's not like a closet ex-Muslim or something like that. I think he's playing the game.
Yeah. All right, let's try to take a call just to see what a Muslim's perspective is.
You want to finish the last question about the blank mushaf? There's 1 minute left.
Okay, yeah, let's finish that one, then take the call, yeah.
Okay, and just mute your mic, please.
One question. To try and make this as specific as possible, I think, if I were to give you a blank mushaf, yeah, and tell you to write what is munazzal verbatim from Allah into that mushaf with no human interference, would you write something which corresponds?
It's not an easy answer. It's not an easy yes or no. It is enough for the Muslim to believe that the
I think
Quran
this should be an easy yes or no, though. Yes, I have to.
Okay, very, very well. So, yeah, Mohammed, after we get off this phone call, me and you, let's have a number of discussions. No problem. I'm very open with advanced students. But these issues should not... Look, it is Kalamullah, what is going to be written. It is Kalamullah.
What would you write?
You're pushing me. And I'm saying it's not hikmah to... Listen, I have a condition. Like I said, everything I say is going to be factual. If I wanted to do tawdiyah and whatnot, I would do it right now in front of you. There is no need for tawdiyah. The Quran is the uncreated speech of Allah. The Quran is preserved. The Quran is known. The Quran is mutawatir. And alhamdulillah, all of the qira'at are the Quran. All of the qira'at are authentic. Alhamdulillah. Leave it at that, ya akhi. Beyond this, honestly, I have no problem. We'll have discussions or take my class. But beyond this requires background information. It is enough for the Muslim to know that the Quran is the speech of Allah that has been protected, and what we recite is the kalam of Allah. That is enough for the Muslims.
I appreciate what you're saying, but
So that was that was interesting. It was like before he could even finish the question, Yasir Qadhi cut him off and said,
"It's not an easy answer."
It's not an easy answer, and Yeah, wow. So yeah, that was that was a handful and quite an explosive bombshell, right?
Yeah. So what I want is I want somebody to talk to me. I'll see what they feel about as a Muslim from the perspective and how they view Yasir Qadhi's opinion. And then we also want to see is have Muslim scholars like there have been a certain few scholars, especially in Pakistan. At least I can speak for myself. Even Sayyid Abu Alam Maududi, he even wrote in his book that you can take every Quran from anywhere in the world and they'll all be identical. So this narrative has been pushed by some Muslim scholars too. And this perfect preservation, word to word, tashkil for tashkil, it's completely false. And Muslim scholarship is the one who preserved, wrote books on it, and that's what Yasir Qadhi is alluding to. And why does he keep saying that just don't tell the people, just don't tell the people, stop, don't take a deep dive? Because he says, and I'll break it down for you, is he says the Quran is the kalam of Allah, the uncreated speech of Allah. Okay, so if the Quran is uncreated, that means it's eternal, so it coexisted forever, and
It's like another god almost.
so that means that when Allah, let's say, sent the verses about the suckling of the adults, like 5 or 10, and then it was removed, or stoning wars, it was initially sent down as revealed verbatim eternal speech of Allah, but then it's not found in the Quran. So what I'm asking is there eternal speech of Allah that exists other than the Quran as well? Or the Quran itself had these verses, but they're taken out. So did they unbecome the eternal speech of Allah? Are they still part of the Mus'haf, Ummul Kitab in Lawh Mahfuz? Does God have annotations next to it? Like, okay, yeah, this verse was cancelled this Hijri, this year of Muhammad's life, and was subsided by this one. There's a lot of problems with the theology of it, right? Like I'm just brushing over the surface. Like this goes deep as Mutazallah, the studies, and this goes and on and on. But what I want to ask is like, what are you hiding? Why is this hidden so much? So I'm just gonna give a brief synopsis of the traditional scholarly, the traditional Islamic preservation. It was like the Quran was, when it was coming down, sometimes Allah would reveal something, but then change his mind and make Muhammad forget the verse completely that was revealed prior. Sometimes the prior verses revealed will still be in the Quran, but they'll be superseded by nearer revelations. Muhammad dies, there is no actual copy of the Quran as in a physical form, and it's being preserved by human memory. Then they've had this battle where a lot of Hufaz died. So, kind of the story, they wrote it because one of the caliphs suggested that we cannot lose the Quran and lose the Hufaz, right? And what ended up happening, so they made a copy, gave it to the wife of the Prophet, but then came the time of Uthman, and Uthman burned all the Qurans. Now, one asks, what was the problem? What led up to Uthman to take such a drastic action where he's burning the earliest copies of the Quran? And what's also important is that there were many, many mushafs. So, like Ubay had his own codex, Ibn Masud had his own codex, Ali had his own, and they had different surah orders, verse orders. Some had canceled verses in their recital, some said no. They actually had conflicts with each other. And Abdullah bin Mas'ud hated Zayd bin Thabit, who said that this guy was in the loins of his father when I was hearing the Quran from the Prophet's mouth. This is in Tirmidhi. But long story short, there were conflicts between the Sahaba. Then Uthman burns the Quran. And even post burning the Quran, there are still variants we find in the riwayat. So this is what's very important to understand. There's pre-Uthmanic, okay? And then there's post-Uthmanic. Post-Uthmanic is when normally we get to the Riwayah, and then there's these teachers that orally translate Hafs from Asim and Duri, Susi, Warsh, and all that. Keeping it short and simple, now even the current Qurans that we have, some say there's 7 authentic readings, some say there's 10, some say there's 15, 14. Generally 7 are accepted. Even them, they have missing words, missing phrases, missing letters, verse numbering is different, and sometimes the word do change the meaning. Qala or qul said, or commanding to go say something, who was fighting, stuff like this. So when you actually examine, so you have the manuscripts, like the Sana manuscript and Benghazi Mohsen, I did a whole presentation on it. They have issues. They have verse orders changed, phrases missing. Then you get to the companions. They have severe discrepancies amongst themselves of what is part of the Quran and what isn't, of which surah is still part, which is abrogated. Then you have Osman burning the Qurans. Then even past that, you still have the variants, textual variants. So you end up with a cesspool that every step of the way, it's anything but perfection. It's like, yeah, it's good relatively compared to the Bible, but every step of the way you find a problem and you're like, man, it really looks more like human preservation than perfect godly preservation, right?
I don't understand enough about the Bible to comment on it, but I've heard that there's tens of thousands of manuscripts of the Bible, which in some ways actually
is better than the Quran.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's better than the Quran compared to just having all of them eliminated and burned, and now we don't, like, we have a sort of bottleneck, right? You know what I mean? Where all of the evidence was destroyed, so it's a big question mark. Right? So whoever would like to join in and call, you're not going to be humiliated. This is not about humiliation.
No.
You can do audio only. You don't have to do your video if you don't want to. Feel free. We're just having a conversation here. We're not claiming to be scholars or experts. We're claiming to have a background in something that is, and we're definitely very interested in this topic. So this is, you know, a personal interest to both of us. We spent a lot of our lives believing in this religion, and we're happy to talk about it. If there's something specific you'd like to talk about, even if it's not necessarily related to Quran preservation, because Quran preservation is a very technical topic and it requires quite in-depth, as Yasir Qadhi has said, it's one of the most difficult topic, not the preservation per se, but the ahruf and the qiraat. And it's quite, if you want to call in, how do you call? You need to click on the link that I'm posting. There it is right there, and just go to that URL, and you'll get a chance to come on the show and have a conversation with us. So yeah, I agree with you what you're saying, Gondal, and it's quite interesting that we are every day getting new information. And what I think is that a lot of this stuff is still very niche and very like hidden in academia, so to speak. So I really do feel like what we need to do, and Yasir Qadhi just did us a big favor by just basically sharing what's already kind of common knowledge in academia, with in the mass public, right? So it wasn't obvious to Muslims, but because he has such a huge platform and he's so well respected, other than those Salafis that are trying to take him down.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting thing we can talk about, right? We can talk about the whole. We can talk about the whole Madkhali thing, basically the clipboard, also known as clipboard Salafis. Nim Grace is asking, did you know about this when you were Muslim? I knew very little about the 7 Qiraat. I knew there was 7 Qiraat, and when I found out, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I found out there's different recitations for them, because I had a Quran website. I had a verse-by-verse Quran website.com. And that's when I found out, because we wanted to support all the different recitations of the Quran. And then I found out there's Walsh and different ones, and they even have different numbering. So that was what surprised me, because the standard Hafs on Asim has 6,236 ayat, but this one I think had 6666. I don't know if it's 6666. I don't even know, but it was a different number. I don't think it's 666. I think that's just like some fake news. Yeah, so I don't think I knew about this when I was Muslim, but I kind of knew a little bit about it, but I never looked into it into much detail.
For myself, at least, like constantly, I was told like the Quran is word to word, preserved letter to letter, and I was peddled this. And it wasn't just like people who were the layman, like my Islamic studies teacher who had the master's from the University of Karachi would say the same thing. Or like the imams at the local mosque, they were adamant. And actually, I came across this once way back in like 2014. I initially came to Canada, and it was about manuscripts. I didn't look into it with too much detail, but my reasoning there was that it was written what I was in my head, it was written the same. It's just that with every dialect, the pronunciation changed. I wasn't aware that there are actual words, letters, or verses being rearranged in their chronology. While we're waiting for another question or a call, what I want to point out is a lot of these mathematical miracles also fall apart in the face of these variants. For example, Numan Ali Khan says in about Surah Baqarah, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, that we created you as a middle nation.
Yeah.
And he says that Surah Baqarah has 286 verses. This falls in the center 143rd verse.
Yeah.
But actually, it's 287 in the Welsh Quran, so the miracle doesn't work. Right?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
All
So we have two guests, and I just want to quickly address two things before we get to the guests. Anna says you were born in Ahmadi family. You said in a way to converted to Sunni Islam. I don't know why people always confuse Ahmadiyya and Ismaili. It bugs me a lot because it's totally different.
Yeah.
Ahmadiyya is totally different from Shia Ismaili Sunni. Shia Ismaili, I should not Sunni. Shia Ismaili.
Okay.
Ismailis come from the Shia background, Shia line. So we have someone here, and most epic. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Where are you? Hi.
Hi. Hi. My name is John, and Walaikum salam, but I'm not a Muslim.
Okay.
I'm an atheist from the Netherlands.
Okay.
And first thing, I want to thank you that I can be on your cast streaming live. This is very exciting for me. And I would like to say first things first, Gondal, where is your hair?
Like I said, it was a spontaneous decision, which was made within 2 hours after a very hot summer day. So it was all done at home, very spontaneous. Yeah.
So do you have a comment about this topic?
Yes. Not about the topic, but I have a question for Gondal. I have followed you for some time now, and I think you are great. You're great. The way you put it, the way you do your research is, it's very profound. I would like to ask you, why don't you do more online debates, especially now?
So I have partaken, I believe, in a few debates. One was with the director of Ask a Muslim, Omar Abdul Fattah. And I was in a conversation with Mufti Abdullahs al-Maliki.
Yes.
Then there was an academic, actually a PhD from Columbia University in Islamic Studies, but he converted to Christianity, Hassan Azad. I talked to him. Then there was another friend of ours who will, for his safety and privacy, anonymous, but he's a very educated Muslim. We had him. A lot of the times what happens is, like with debates, I feel I would rather side more with conversations, because with debates, we don't really accomplish much, because one of the examples I'll give you is the debate Mohammed Hijab had with Cosmic Skeptic. And you see the behavior tendencies of these people where they're more about attacking and discrediting the person and making a theater, a drama out of it, than actually caring about the arguments, right? So like one example that Cosmic Skeptic pointed out, if Cosmic Skeptic had, misquoted the Quran, Mohammed Hijab would have been all over me. You're ignorant. You don't speak Arabic, blah, blah, blah. But in that same debate, Mohammed Hijab was adamant, and he was pointed out twice wrong that he named the chapter from a book wrong by the audience, and he just brushed it off, no worries. So, like I said, that's one of the reasons why I don't debate a lot. I rather would go for a conversation, more free-flowing. And I think like Abdullah Samir has also done quite a few, like Mufassal Islam, Dr. Hugh Ross, and whatnot.
Yeah, not as many. Well, a couple. I had a hard time finding people in general, but most epic Black, I don't know, whatever your name is. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you both.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Definitely Abdullah Gondal needs to do more, and one day he will launch a channel. For now, we're gonna try to see how this co-project goes, and if it goes well, we'll continue doing it. And thank you for your question. Now, feel free to call in again.
One last comment. The other thing is, because I'm studying neuroscience and then working and then family, and I have a kid, so I don't get a lot of time for this, so that's one thing. We don't have my channel up and running. I've been trying to get to it. Sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. But I think you're academically very sound, and the way you put it, and it's very transparent. Everyone can understand it. Here in the Netherlands, you have a lot of fans, a lot of fans. So peace to you, both to you, Abdullah, Samir. Love you, brother.
Thank
You're
you.
a great guy. Keep on doing what you're doing. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, that was wonderful. And yeah, who would have imagined you have a real life? People think like this is all we do. Like, oh my goodness. But the thing is, I mean, I just want to say this before I take the other guest that we have. Somebody needs to do this. Okay, so like honestly, the fact is, if nobody does this, if all of us just go live our lives, then who's gonna push back against these Dawa guys? I mean, you know, Yaqeen Institute has got what Daniel Hakitaju posted this thing about how they got $3.4 million in donations last year. The year before that, $1.8 million. Who's gonna counter this? Like, none of us have the type of resources that they have. Like, you know, one of those guys can write an article, like, you know, whatever, 30-page article that, I don't know, maybe no one will read, maybe somebody will read, but they'll get like, you know, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for that. When me and Gondal, we're doing this in the weekends and evenings for free, or, you know, get a little bit of donations here and there. I have my Patreon, thankfully, that I'm so grateful for that allows me to pay for all the fees for the streaming and the software and equipment and all that, and to make this happen. So definitely we appreciate it. It's so much work. I don't know if people realize how much work it is, but definitely we appreciate, you know, all the support we're getting from you guys, financial, sharing the videos, doing the subtitles, you know, and whatever you're sending us comments, all of that we appreciate so much. So to get to the next guest, hello, Bibi Baba. Hi, can you introduce yourself, please? Hi, do we have you on the line? Hello? You're on the air. Hello, Bibi Baba. Bibi.
Just make sure your mic is unmuted at the bottom, because that's the common
mic is not muted.
Okay.
Gondal, do you want to add anything about the work that we do while we're waiting? Because it seems like he's not connected.
Okay. Well, one other thing, like, is like, we're doing this and we're not getting a lot of social benefit out of it. Like, a lot of times Muslims jump to the conclusion that we're doing this for money, or that we're Yahudi agents, or we are being paid and stuff like that. But actually, no, I barely made anything out of been for the past 2-3 years now. And to be honest, like, I know so many ex-Muslim activists and I'm close friends with them, and very frankly, no, nobody gets paid by Israelis. Please get this out of your head. We're not, the most we make, maybe like $10 on a video from ad clicks, yeah? But no.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
So we have another guest, James SC. James is a fellow patron. Hello, James.
Hello, James.
Hi,
remember. How's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, it's great to talk to you directly. And I want to say thanks for the great work you're doing. And I have an apology I need to make to Abdullah Samir, because a couple of years ago, I after one of Abdullah Samir's videos, I think about Aisha and Mohammed, I kind of left a harshly worded comment saying, "Oh, you're trying to whitewash it, or you're trying to play nice and softy." But so sorry, I was way too harsh that time. But you guys are both awesome.
No worries. I understand. It's all good. I mean, it did sound like Islamic apologetics. I think it did probably sound like I was defending Muhammad. I think my perspective was to look at his actions from his era and not judge him from that perspective. From a universal prophet for all times, definitely we can judge him, because if he's a perfect example for all times, why was he involved in slavery? Why was he involved with a little girl that would, later on be morally objectionable? And we would look at that and say, wow, that was weird, that was bad. So other than that, do you have any questions or comments you want to add?
Yeah. So just on the point that you just raised, in fact, when you mentioned the Yaqeen Institute, which that's like Omar Suleiman and a bunch of Jonathan A.C. Brown, those guys, kind of, I mean, they're basically Muslim Brotherhood, like Ikhwanis. Like, I mean, let's not beat around the bush, or like, you know, generally, like, kind of, if you read between the lines, kind of, I know that's the kind of vibe I'm getting. And so I was just wondering, like, you know, most ex-Muslims kind of, they kind of, you know, they don't kind of get involved in the politics, really. They're kind of more interested in, you know, let's talk about the facts about the religion and the social issues that are affecting kind of everyday Muslims and ex-Muslims in kind of these countries. But I mean, do you ever feel like, you know, come on, these Islamists, they're just kind of getting away writing all this nonsense, and they're kind of building these political alliances? Like, how much of a priority do you guys both see that? Or do you think they're kind of not really ever going to achieve anything because what they're trying to do is so sort of, you know, it's such a wild kind of, you know, they're never really going to Islamize North America, are they? So how do you balance those kinds of those things?
That's an interesting question. From my side, like, I haven't really dealt or dived into the Ikhwanis or the Muslim Brotherhood, so I can't comment on the comparison between Yaqeen Institute, but I do feel that Yaqeen Institute is mostly targeted towards removing doubts of Muslims, but it is, in a sense, an intellectual, let's say, forum where Muslim scholars from different sects and different backgrounds can come and express. So you'll literally find sometimes articles saying that Aisha was actually 6 and 9, and then literally beneath it, it'll be like, no, there's an academic argument for she was 18 and whatnot. So I feel like Yaqeen is definitely not, and I would say not as bad as some of the other Salafi organizations. I appreciate their existence because they are trying to reclaim the Dawah space from a lot of these trolls that have taken over, and a lot of these teenage style dramatic drama effects, like, you know, Dawah Man, like, I mean, and that's what Yasir Qadhi said too, that they have dominated and they're doing more harm to Islam and whatnot. But like I said, Yaqeen is a fresh breath of air, but I still like have my gripes in like certain aspects of how they express their ideas. And then there's the whole problem with their internal infighting with Daniel Haqiqat Jew, who was actually, I think, involved on the board of research initially, and then he wrote this big article trying to expose them to be more liberal. So I feel like if they are trying to push for a more liberal, more reformed version of Islam, I'm all for it, because that means lesser of Wahhabi extremism, right? But that's my 2 cents on the issues. I'm not too aware of the politics behind it. So Samir might know more about that.
So I don't know either about whether the Islam is leaning or not. What I do know is, like, the same thing that Gondal said, that they're focusing on sort of academic arguments. Daniel Haqiqat Jew, like he said, used to be part of Yaqeen, is very upset with them because they're making excuses for things like Aisha not being 9. And I don't know how far down that rabbit hole of modernity or modernization and reinterpretation they're going. But I think the problem with Yaqeen, and this reminds me of, I think Ali Rizvi said this, that a lot of these softer sects, well, it's not even a sect in this case, but like, let's say the Ahmadis. The Ahmadis, you know, with their soft version of Islam, with no jihad, there's no miracles in the Quran, it's all very metaphorical, blah, blah, blah. They almost give ground cover to the Islamists in a sense, because then people will see that. Some people will see that and think this is Islam. They'll see that, you know, oh, Aisha wasn't 9. And like, for example, Asadullah Ali will write this big, long article about between the backbone and the ribs and how it actually means sexual intercourse. I don't even know how he came up with that, but he spent like 45 pages writing about that. I feel like this gives ground cover to the much worse people in Islam. In a sense, it is kind of countering them, but it also gives them, you know, because it's almost like a drug, I feel, in a sense, that once you get into Islam, you know, you can just keep going deeper and deeper. And if you go down that path, maybe you would be, you know, you'd feel like, okay, I can still be a Muslim. I still feel proud to be a Muslim because, you know, maybe Aisha was a 9. But then when you study it more, you're like, well, actually it was. And then you kind of go more into the Salafism, right? And which is a much more dangerous path. So I don't know how it'll play out. I do agree with Abdullah Gondal that there's been a lot of, the problem is a lot of these Dawah guys are creating much worse of a problem in a sense, and the creating more drama, and And so that's definitely not good for the Muslims. Maybe, I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, what do we prefer? Like a reformist kind of Muslim that will say things that are nice, but at the same time not really, you know, help people, but that doesn't help people leave Islam, right? So I don't know. I'm not sure, but I don't know if the Islamist leaning in any way. I have no idea.
Yeah, I've got one sort of bit of pushback on this idea, like because yeah, I agree. Like, you know, if they're actually kind of reforming and they're actually liberal, like there's a difference between like an apologist who's just trying to kind of cover things up, but won't actually give any ground, and if there wasn't any social pressure, they just revert back to exactly how it's you know, they see as how it's meant to be. There's a difference between that and a kind of genuine reformer like, I know, Majid Nawaz, or kind of different but similar in some respects, like Shabir Ali. They're actually kind of making real ground, saying, well, okay, we're going to change the hadith methodology to make it in line with, you know, our standards now and that sort of thing. But the reason why I don't kind of group the reason why I see Yaqeen Institute more as kind of apologists who kind of are just trying to, you know, sort of cover it up but not actually change anything, is the fact that in loads of their articles, and like their articles are written by different people, kind of, but you know, I've seen this pattern again and again. They'll in order to boost their opinions, they'll quote Islamic law from kind of these traditional Orthodox Islamic scholars, and very often that same kind of scholar will kind of just support the traditional mainstream Sharia, and often in the same kind of fatwa or the same kind of book that they're quoting from. Like the next page, it will say that, oh, and the main opinion is this, and they're only kind of quoting a tiny part of it. And like like I saw this on their kind of thing about jihad, and they quoted a bit of like Ibn Rushd, the Distinguished Jurist Primer, and then the next page it kind of said what the, you know, yes, there is offensive jihad. Yeah. The other thing is that Omar Suleiman, like, you know, he's one of these guys, kind of like Tariq Ramadan, in that kind of, he'll have like these lectures that he's thinking he's giving to a Muslim audience, where he'll say, oh, and we find out that the Jews are the reason why meat rots, and he'll say that to Muslim, and then like, yeah,
Omar Suleiman, yeah, he had this whole lecture about Islamic slavery, and he came up with all of these 100+ requirements to have a slave. She can't be married, and this and that, and I was like, you have to ask her permission before sleeping with her. And I'm like, where is he coming up with all of this stuff? I've never heard this before. Like, it's not in the hadith. And then I realized that, well, this is how he takes it. But yeah, obviously it's a different approach. But thank you for your comments. For sure, I think both of us are fighting this because we disagree with Islam. We think Islam is a net loss for the world, even whether it's a reform Islam or whatever Islam it is, we think it's bad for the world either way, right?
I want to just have a few last closing comments on this. So one thing was like, how do you define what Islam is, right? So a lot of times, because we hear this from Muslims all the time, that hold on to the Quran and the Sunnah of the four caliphs, and then it becomes that Islam is what the origin scriptures in Muhammad and the earliest Muslims understood it as. But what's interesting is, from an anthropological perspective, you can adopt a functionalist approach where religion isn't defined by who coined it, but how it progresses and evolves with society, because the whole purpose of religion is to help people who are alive at that time, and how they use and keep passing for the religion. So there's that too. Then with reforms, there's different degrees of reformers, right? So there could be somebody very, very open, like Mufti Abu Layth, who might say that, oh yeah, he's given a fatwa to me that alcohol is okay, weed is okay, stuff like that. And like he will straight say things that, yeah, the black stone is probably a piece of a broken idol because that was what was normal. But then we will have somebody who's very, very open, like Majid Nawaz. But then we have certain reformers who are not as vocal, like Osama Hassan, or I forgot the person's name, but anyways, the Yasir Qadhi, sorry, we were just talking about him. Like, he also has a very reformed approach on certain matters, right? So there's different degrees of reform, and then it becomes a choice of, do you want the less evil of the Muslims? And then you can say, okay, well, how do I know if this person's genuinely trying to be a cover for Islamic apologists, or does he actually believe that what he's saying is in fact what he believes to be true Islam, and he doesn't even realize that he's pushing a reform version, but in fact, you know, it is reform. So also, you said about the fringe opinions. I like the Mufti Walais does the same thing. I would have a Mufti, or they can tell you that, okay, this is a fringe opinion, but because the need for times, they can be in the backdrop of ijtihad and saying this is what is useful and applicable in our times. I know it might be not the most intellectually sound or honest way to do things, but I would still take a lesser literalist approach any day over the Wahhabi Islam.
Well said. Well said. I think we'll end it on that. Thank you, James, for the call, and do call in again.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, next one is Marcel. Marcel, hi. You are live. Marcel Proust, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Can you introduce
Nice
yourself,
to see
and do you have a question or a comment for us?
I do have a question. I'm a philosophy instructor and I teach a lot of Muslim students. And the area of philosophy that I focus on is early modern philosophy, particularly Spinoza, who's an early critic of religion. And the pain on my students' faces when they have to read this stuff is amazing. Like, I feel bad, but, I'm having difficulty teaching them the lesson because it's so against what their values are. For example, like Spinoza says that prophets give prophecy depending on their disposition, meaning Muhammad he doesn't say this directly about Muhammad, but I could make the argument saying Muhammad wants Aisha because he has desires that are abnormal. That would be the basic argument. Or he says about Isaiah, since Isaiah is melancholic, he produces melancholic prophecies. And I find the work interesting, but I'm just trying to figure out how I can teach this stuff without offending my students. That's basically my main question. Like, is there any way that I can approach them in a way that isn't so threatening?
So I'll go first. If you can just mute your mic because I'm hearing myself. First of all, sorry, Marcel, I'm just gonna mute you for a second. Okay, there. Yeah. So first of all, I have to say, it's really great that you're actually asking this question and you care about Muslim students, and you want to make sure that you do the best you can. You do the job with excellence that you're doing that. And you care enough to not, try not to upset them and to convey the message that you want to, the lesson plan, without offending them or hurting their feelings. Now, from my perspective, I would say they know what they're getting into. I mean, this is philosophy. Philosophy has the highest probably number of atheists than any other department, I would guess. So they hopefully would know what they're getting into. If they don't know what they're getting into, they'll find out pretty fast. But, I'd say, even looking at them as adults, that let them feel the pain if they have to feel the pain. I think that's okay. You know what I mean? Like when I was Muslim and I took those classes I took that made me uncomfortable, and one of them was a psychology class, believe it or not. And on the first day of the psychology class, I don't even remember exactly, it was psychology of evil or something, he showed an Osama bin Laden thing and airplanes or something. And I felt so uncomfortable because I was the only Muslim guy in the class. And I actually dropped out of the class. And I know that's not the goal, but in that case, that's what I did. But like, there's other people that stayed in the class and they were Muslim and they were fine with it, right? And I felt uncomfortable, so I left. But everyone has a choice whether they want to stay in the class or not. I think you're coming from a good place, but I think you don't need to coddle them. And I think, they'll be fine even if you teach them. I don't know if there's any way to solve that problem, because philosophy, in my opinion, goes against, can be harmful to religious beliefs and dogma. And so I don't think there's anything you can do about it. Gondal, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. What I would say is, why do we have this problem where we constantly see Muslim students drop out of classes or speak up to professors? This happened recently in a class I was taking about it was about anthropology, and it was biological anthropology. So a couple of the students were not happy and they walked out of the class, and they actually yelled at the prof, "You actually believe this?" And he's like, "Well, I'm showing you all the intermediate species." One of the things I've noticed, and why Muslims seem to be more rigid in their belief, is the doctrine of kalam, i.e. that the Quran is the literal speech of God. And this leaves them in a spot where they can't outright deny it or claim a lot of flexibility, as you can see with Bible, because the Bible is not the literal speech of God. It's more so the inspired speech of God. So there's that thing. Now, one other way you can approach it is you can try to tell them that the idea of kalam being the literal speech of God has issues with it, theological issues where, like we pointed out earlier. If you can soften that belief that it's not the literal eternal speech, and that might help. And also referencing to the Quran, talking about constantly لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, that use your brains, فَأْتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ, that bring forth your evidences if you're true. So you can use their scripture against them and say, okay, well, if you think you're right, then your book says use your brains and bring evidence. Please bring me your evidence, right? So you can kind of use reverse psychology on them.
I don't know how that would go though if he started
Yeah.
Quran in the class.
Then Ghazali has issues with this great Muslim philosopher. I'm not going to go in detail, but he said that philosophy should be avoided, and that was an issue. Closing remarks on the Aisha thing. Actually,
Is that like an incoherence to the philosophers?
Sorry,
Ghazali.
The man you said that wanted Muslims to avoid philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah, something along the lines. He also said that maths might be playing with the devil, and it makes you more towards let's say apostasy. So they said just don't study philosophy.
Okay.
Along the lines.
There's a big difference. There's a big difference among Salafis, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think even Gondal is a little bit like, because Salafi leaning in the sense of like based on the answer you just gave, because I've heard Muslims that are more like into philosophy as well. People, especially the Sufi or the Madhabis or the more traditional Muslims, they love Ghazali and they love, kind of the whole thing is kalam, cosmological argument. Like that's one of the first thing they teach. Apparently they teach the kids, which I was shocked when I heard this. We teach all of us students, there's basically the kalam, cosmological argument. Whereas from my background, the Salafi leaning sort of perspective, they don't even care about arguments for God. It's just the Quran, the Sunnah, and that's it. So there's different perspectives. Our perspective is a little bit more on one side, I think, than the other. Would you agree, Gondal?
Yeah, I would say because I was mostly exposed to a very literalist Pakistani / pseudo Salafi version of Islam, and it was very hard on it. Honestly, I would say one thing, and he would realize too, is Muslims in the eastern part of the world, I'm not kidding, they live in an intellectual bubble. Okay. Especially at least for Pakistan, right? So when they come out to countries like Canada, US, or the West, and they get confronted by these Western academics, then what happens is happening to Yasir Qadhi. Their views change significantly, right? So if you were to be Yasir Qadhi from his Salafi days to now. One last remark I wanted to make, Professor said on neuroscience and Aisha, he was saying that he was having bad desires. Now I did a presentation on neuroscience and Muhammad possibly being epileptic, and we mentioned this passing by that epileptics, the sexuality is tied to the temporal lobe. This could explain why Muhammad had hypo, hyper, and weird sexual behaviors. And what's really interesting is we see this direct example in a man who lived, I think he's still alive, Wayne Bent, where not only did he marry his actual son's wife, like Muhammad did with his adopted son's wife, he also married and was arrested for having sexual intercourse with 2 minors, I believe. And the whole background of Muhammad marrying Aisha, where it was literally an angel came holding Aisha in a silk cloth, and Muhammad took that as Allah saying, marry her, is on its own just a bizarre story. It's very bizarre. This 50-year-old man dreams of a girl who's 5 at the time.
Yeah, of course.
So, Professor, thank you very much for your question. That was really good. Who knows, maybe you will inspire some people not to be Muslim. But of course, as long as you're treating truth and, what you think is correct, I think that's the right approach. Whether or not people will be offended, let them be offended, let them be upset. That's part of learning. And that's how the light bulbs go off,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's nice having you, man.
Call again sometime. Okay, next guest, we have 18th letter. Are you here, 18th letter?
Yeah, hello.
Hey, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Actually, I'm going incognito, but I actually corresponded to Abdullah Samir long before. It
Okay.
was regarding, I think you invited Sham Sharma or some other right-wing guy. And I
Okay.
was, I just, it kind of, at that time I was in college, and you know how the cancel culture and all works, right? So when I saw you having correspondence with him, I kind of, triggered, whatever the word you can use, and I wrote a letter saying that there's a problematic elements calling him to this show.
Are you
At
talking about
present, I
Sam
have
Sharma, he's Hindu? Sam Sharma, the Sam Sharma show.
yeah, it's the Sham Sharma, yeah, the Sham
Yeah, I
Sharma
was on
things,
his
yeah.
channel. He didn't come on my channel. I actually went on his channel to talk about Islam. He wanted to ask me questions about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
So what was your comment or question you had?
Oh, nothing. First of all, it was I had to apologize for the way I have reacted for the second, FB post or something which I had directed towards you.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry about it.
It's all forgiven.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, actually, my quick question is towards the other Abdullah. Anyway, since you're in neuro, what's your subject? Basically, I forgot.
Neuroscience.
Okay, neuroscience. Actually, I've been reading into religions, including Hinduism myself, because I'm an ex-Hindu. That's how I like to denote myself. I have problems with the use. Well, it means not just an atheist. I'm very keen on using the word ex-Hindu for certain political implications. Anyway, let me get. So the thing with neuroscience is, like, when I was reading about Hinduism, I came to an unusual, a part where there is. I don't know. Do you know what is ethnogenic? Some or something.
Ethnogenic what?
Ethnogenic origins of religion.
Oh, okay. I understand the argument. Yeah, it's studied in anthropology. Yes.
Yeah. So, like, basically, certain plants can produce some LSD kind of reactions which makes you see hallucinations. So I was kind of thinking. Recently I was watching Ghalib Saab's a podcast. I think you're going to be there in it, right? Hello.
Sorry?
We're gonna be in what podcast?
Ghalib Saab, what is it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, both of you. Yeah. I've been following it vividly for the last few days. Anyway, so that he told me, like, he made a statement that Khadija was a Christian, and she was the one who kind of told Muhammad that the hallucination that he had was from what do you say was from Gabriel. Means he never knew what it was or something. So, and she was a Christian, and she had a kind of like Gnostic Christian roots. So I was reading about a book by John M. Marco. John M. Marco says that Jesus is a mushroom. I mean,
So do you have a question? I mean, we know the story of Khadija and how she convinced Muhammad, but we just want to keep it quick. So because we have other guests.
And I just wanted to know, it's like rather than just epilepsy, can it be that Islam may be an byproduct of an ethnogenic what do you say a way of worship or something like that? Have you ever thought about it in that sense?
Yeah. So there is this theory in anthropology of religion, the Stone Ape theory, and recently they found even marijuana residue in like a religious place in Jerusalem. So you can speculate that mushrooms or LSD or even psychogenic substances initially caused us to come up with religion, or actually, because the way they work is they can enable the different parts of the brain to connect that normally don't communicate, and that could lead to different perspective and ideas, and hence God and whatnot. That's one backdrop of it. Now, do I think Muhammad was taking shrooms or LSD or any hallucinogenics? I don't think so. The thing is with the only thing that stands out is why he would ban alcohol. Could make sense from an epilepsy point of view, where it could worsen seizures. And like you can go anywhere and they'll like have a seizure disorder, don't drink alcohol. But that's again a stretch. I would say there is not much evidence of Muhammad using any hallucinogenic substances. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that there's the lack of evidence doesn't mean absence, like there's no evidence at all. So like Muhammad was going to this cave for a while, right? Like, did he take anything there? Were there any shrooms going in the cave, that he might have ingested? There's so many variables. And the thing is, like, also what could be is like if you do take shrooms or something like this, you can have an onset. And because of that, you might go psycho or require a seizure disorder, right? But this is a stretch. Well, more likely, I feel, especially seeing his life from his growth and how the trauma affected him and his childhood incidents, I think it's more leaning towards a neurological condition that underlay his religiosity and his prophet and Messiah complex. And it's a stretch to say that it was mushrooms or anything like that. The only thing that was really interesting was the tree with Sidratul Muntaha. When Yasir Qadhi described it, that was something that really jumped at me, because he was describing the greatest sign of Allah is a big, big, big tree that either is in the 7th or starts in the 6th, goes into the 7th heaven, and it has these colors fluttering out of it and these gold butterflies around it. That thing, though, I know personally people who have had the exact same, like, I'm not joking, the exact same hallucination on shrooms, right? Like, to the point, like, when I told this to some of my friends, there's like no joke, I had this same trip 2 days ago in a park. Yeah.
Wow.
But that could just be saying that, okay, maybe because of a seizure or something, or it might have triggered that specific network involved in that same hallucination, but from a different causal chain, not necessarily from mushrooms, right? I don't want to go too deep into this, but no, I don't feel he was using hallucinogenics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, 18th letter, thank you for your question.
Thank you for both of you too.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for both of you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Say bye.
Hey, we have John Del Vento.
Oh, my Habibi from Al-Pakistan.
I made it. I brought my topi. Salaam alaikum. Kaise ho, Gandal bhai?
Oh, ho, ho. Tik tak, aap sunao.
ठीक Punjabi bolte hai?
I don't understand Urdu. I feel left out here.
Oh man, well, we could speak the love of the one true religion, right? Islam. But hey guys, this is a really cool topic. I don't want to take too much time. But I did want to do video, and folks, if you don't know me, I'm John Del Vento in the chat. I am an ex-Muslim convert, and one of the reasons I did leave Islam is that whenever you try to have conversations like this with any traditional imam or any traditional Muslim, they get very defensive, very offended, and there's really no reason to, because a lot of these issues are well documented in the Islamic tradition. Yasir Qadhi is a fucking imam. He's an imam, a professional imam. He's not out to destroy Islam. He's trying to normalize Islam. And you're supposed to have these conversations because this whole literal tradition of Islam, this Wahhabi, Salafi, Saudi thing, has only been around for barely 100 years. There's been 1,300 more years of basically a different tradition of the Quran. You read these historical accounts in like the 1700s of these Europeans who traveled in Arabia, and there's all different accounts of people reciting different Qurans in the 17th. So this is a new tradition. And, Muslims in the chat, you don't have to be scared of this. It's something you should talk about. So my question to you guys for like a question is, do you think it's a good thing for mainstream Muslims to, instead of leave their religion, to kind of take a slower approach to maybe say, maybe I'm not going to be a literalist. Maybe I'm going to loosen my position on the Quran first. Maybe I'm going to, read some of these obscure hadith. Maybe I'm going to read Yasir Qadhi's book. Maybe I can still be do you think it's okay to still be a Muslim, but not be a Quran, literalist? Do you think, you could still kind of pray and fast and just get away from this literalism? Because I think it's a good thing for Islam. That would be my question. And it's great to see you guys.
Thank you. It's great. Definitely check out John Del Vento's video as well on my channel. It was a really nice interview, and I find John definitely challenges me. I mean, it's not what I expected, and he'll usually throw a curveball in his arguments and his points, and I'm like, wow, I never thought of it like that. And I really love that different approach. I'm not just saying that; I really mean it. Like, definitely thinks differently than I do, and gives me a different perspective. Gondal, do you want to go ahead and answer this?
Yeah, sure.
And all that.
Firstly, like, I wanted to point out that John also has visited a lot of Islamic countries, so he has a very good perspective of how actual lifestyle is in those countries. That's why he was speaking Urdu.
I have been to Pakistan twice, the most pure, holy, perfect country on the planet.
I like their food though. So
anyway, of course, best food on planet Earth. Sorry to offend the Indians, because obviously Abdullah is paid by the Jews, and 80% of his subscribers are Indians, so they're very defensive of their food. But I'm sorry, guys, the Pakistani food is better. Sorry to offend your many Indian subscribers.
Okay. So let's get back to the point. Was necessary to leave Islam? I feel no, and from a psychological perspective of how humans are and how they resist change, I think we need to have realistic expectations. We can't expect all the Muslims to leave Islam. And a lot of the times, like, if you understand how the theory of mind works, sometimes people, like, and even a lot of people, are worse off without religion as well. So there's the catch to it. Like, I would prefer that to start slow, and necessarily you can still pray. Like, do whatever you want as long as it doesn't harm or force your beliefs on other people in a negative way. For example, if you're reciting the Quran and you come to the part about homosexuality being sin, and if you really want to interpret it being metaphorical and like it's abrogated, and you don't put it into practice, I have no issues with that. And I've noticed this trend too, like you said, slowly this happens. A lot of Muslims, they find out that, Sunni Muslim at least, they find out the hadith. Oh my God, the hadith are so bad. And then they go to the Quran, and then like we're Quranists now, and then eventually they go to the Quran, and then they're like, oh, it's the same. So they kind of leave. Like I said, there's also the concept of cultural Muslim, and I actually stand by. Like, I mean, a lot of times it also doesn't make sense to proclaim yourself as an ex-Muslim. Like, just from a safety perspective as well, and sometimes it's just not socially viable because you can end up cutting ties that might endanger you. And this is also a message to a lot of the ex-Muslims. And this happened to my friend. Okay, I'll tell you a horror story that if you're in Pakistan or countries like Muslim majority countries, please do not open your mouth. Please don't try to be a hero. You're putting yourself at undue risk. So there's these things. So like you said, pretend to be a Muslim, be a cultured Muslim, propagate reformed, sugar-coated, cherry-picked Islam. Like I said earlier, I'll take that. I'll take a Sufi who dances in the masjid any day over a Wahhabi, right? That's my 2 cents on it. But yeah, I don't think the Muslim world will generally overnight in like a decade just leave Islam. I think it's going to be a very slow, progressive reform to modern interpretations, and then later on, like what happened mostly to Christianity.
I'll add that I've noticed it's different for everybody. So some people just can't let go, and there was one guy I was talking to that was he lives in the Middle East. He's gay. I forget his background now. I think he's Indian or something. Anyways, and he was Muslim, and he's like having doubts about Islam, and also he told me he's gay as well. And I found that with gay people, sometimes what they'll do is they'll work double time to try to make Islam make sense, because they feel guilty that they're like questioning their own self. Like, maybe I'm just doubting Islam because I'm gay, and Islam says you can't be gay or you can't act on that, right? So they work twice as hard to be. And this guy, like, he would message me all the time, asking me what felt like the same questions over and over again. I'm like, and it was like going on for like years. And I'm like, dude, like, just leave Islam already. Like, what is going on with you? And then finally he did actually leave Islam. I was shocked. One day he messaged me. I'm like, I'm not Muslim anymore. I'm like, oh, you never told me. And I was happy for him. And he's like, he doesn't feel guilty about being who he is anymore. But I feel like there's such a different approach for everybody, different paths for everybody. Some people like me,
I'll add another thing to this is
Yeah.
For myself personally, right? Like I am more of like a thinker, but then there are more people who are more they side with their emotions and they give that more importance, right? So, and like even from the perspective of neuroscience and theory of mind, you will literally see that people who have high EQs, emotional quotients, are more likely to believe in God, versus people whose IQs are higher, in the sense that their theory of mind is hindered in like in autistic people. They're significantly less likely to believe in God.
Yeah.
Right. So you can actually show which part of the brain's implicated in it. So, like I said, if some people are emotional than rational, and if that's their personality type, they will have a harder time leaving their religion, because to them, going to heaven and having a meaning and purpose of life is more important than being rational and trying to rationalize and being strictly intellectual about everything. So, like you said, different characteristics, personalities.
And it comes back to the text, right? It's like, how much do you worship this book? Like, how much do you love this Mus'haf, this Quran? Like, are you going to stake every word on this Quran, or are you going to feel the deep, like, what does it mean to pray 5 times a day? Do you actually think about that, or do you spend all day on Twitter, arguing with Abdullah about these tangential issues? Some of these some of these Muslim comments are pretty cool, but I just want to challenge these Muslims who are being more aggressive. Like Yasir Qadhi asked a simple question, he was asked a simple question. If you took a piece of paper right now and you were asked to write down a Quran verse, what would you write? It's very simple. And like all the Muslims in the chat, do you agree right now, like type it right now, that the Quran you read today is the same Quran that Muhammad read? Like, do you believe that? It's a simple question. Like, and they will obfuscate, whatever that fucking word is. Mohammed Hijab will put a 6-hour video out, but it's a simple question. Like, do you believe the Quran today is the same as Muhammad? And if you say yes, you're going to open a can of worms. If you say no, then you could start having a discussion, and people will take your religion a little more seriously, and that's why Christianity is still around. When I was a kid, the Christian pastors used to say this stuff all the time, all over the place. They used to say the same exact thing about the Bible. And then Bart Ehrman books started coming out, and, internet started coming out, and people started to push back from the outside. And then in order to save the religion, basically, the Christians had to change. And you see the numbers going on in Turkey and all these things. Like, if they're going to save the religion for the next generation, they're going to have to accept this textual criticism. So, in a sense, this is very helpful to Muslims. So all Mohammed Hijab's groupies are going to need to get with the program, because they're becoming more and more of a fringe, and they're hurting their religion. And they're one of the reasons I left. And I think they're one of the reasons you left, Abdullah. And probably all of us have probably left Islam. Many ex-Muslims from this bullshit literalism. Like, do you worship this book, or do you worship more? And that's just the last thing I have to say. I think it's more of a positive thing, guys. But the idea is, like, Muhammad was not going around reciting the Quran in 7 ahruf. And it isn't even 7. The 7 number was decided later. Like, Jay Smith is coming out with information saying that there was 36 ahruf. Muhammad is not walking around reciting the Quran, and that's just the issue, guys. So all the Muslims in the chat, that's the challenge. Do you believe that it's the same Quran? Yes or no? And I appreciate you guys. Have a great night.
That was really good.
Thank you, man.
I feel like that question might actually go above the head of most Muslims, because they don't even understand the whole idea of a kirat, hafs an asim. What does that even mean? I don't think anyone even knows what that means. So I think when Mohammed Hijab was asking that question, he thought it was a simple answer. Yasir Qadhi, but I don't think most Muslims would even get that question in the first place. But thank you so much, John, for calling in. We got 2 more guests. We're waiting, and we want to take them before we close off for today. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you, man.
Okay, take care. Bye.
We'll be seeing the
Khuda Hafiz. Peace. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Peace and love.
You too.
Okay, so next guest we have is Agent Tony. Tony, hey, how's it going?
Hello, how are you? Thank you for
having me. How are you? So you're
nice to meet you.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm closer to ex-Muslim.
Oh, nice.
Sunni Islam. I'm Egyptian.
Nice. So Sunni Muslims are the best, not the Shia ones.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So I've been following I've been following your content, Abdullah, Samir, and Gondol. I've seen you have a fantastic dialogue. You contributed so much to seeing Islam from an interesting point of view. And I've been studying around different spiritualities and religions, and I came across this idea of transhumanism. Do you know transhumanism? So I find it interesting, like, let's say, because religions have a long line of evolution. So I think religion started as animism. So that's a belief that we attribute souls in inanimate objects, and it got more complex. And then monotheism, which is present in Islam, Judaism, and so on. It will not stop at that point. It will carry on evolving. And then transhumanism, with transhumanism, if we manage to beat death, if we find immortality, that will radically change religion at all. So,
Indeed,
I ask, what are your thoughts on transhumanism?
Okay.
Yeah, transhumanism is definitely very, very interesting. It's basically the idea that we can evolve beyond physical limitations, and maybe live in get brains connected to a computer. I mean, there's some interesting movies of that. It's a fascinating idea. I don't know how realistic. I mean, I think it'll happen maybe one day, but I don't know how close we are to that. Definitely, if we ever conquer death, and some people think that it's going to happen, then we will see the end of religion, because without death, there's no need for religion anymore, right? So I feel like if we ever do get to the point of immortality, not immortality, which is we get rid of all the diseases and sicknesses, and we'll find religion will be completely, I don't know, maybe people will come up with new religions that are not based on hereafters anymore. They'll be just like, I don't know, I'm not sure, like some sort of like meditation and spirituality and different type of mindfulness. But yeah, I think transhumanism is a fantastic concept, and I think Yuval Harari wrote about it in his second book, right? Anything you want to add to that, Gondol?
Transhumanism, I think, will be eventually possible. I mean, we're at a point in neuroscience where we can map the brain connectome with quite a lot of detail, to the point where actually I was reading a paper today that using algebraic topology and mathematical topologies, neuroscientists were able to find that our brain, our neurons, create structures in 11 dimensions to store information and whatnot. We know that the central lateral thalamus is involved in the idea of like consciousness. So I don't believe in a soul. I believe, yes, we can eventually come to a point, especially with quantum computers, be able to simulate the human connectome inside a computer with all its inputs being simulated. And this also leads to an ethical question. So for example, what I'm getting to is everything you see here, you're not actually seeing the light or hearing the sound waves. You're actually, those sound waves or those light waves get converted into electrical signals that correspond to your brain, that then integrates them and like has to reintegrate, so corresponding with external reality. Now, in essence, it's just electrical signaling. If you can mimic that electrical signaling, the brain cannot tell if it's existing in reality or not. So in essence, if we can imagine this, you can be sitting inside a pod right now with a computer feeding you all the stimulus through your brainstem. You have no clue that you're actually alive or not. So there is that possibility. With animism, like I said, it comes back to the soul and the theory of mind. And one of the things why I find animism interesting is then the temporal lobes are very important in object recognition and inanimate objects and whatnot. So you actually do see Muhammad talk to trees and stones too. We touched on that too. But if you notice, you would have seen a lot of schizophrenic people sometimes talking to walls, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of comes from that too. And like I said, again, if your theory of mind is different or you process emotions differently, you will actually be less prone to belief in gods and angels. And this is then comes back to a theological question too, like why would God create autistic people with this lack or this tendency predisposition and then test them in the same way? With the immortality, yes, I would say it would kill religion in a way. I could see it happening where we can use CRISPR, another genetic tool, to remove a lot or edit out most of the diseases and stuff. like I said, we're at a crossroads where our, let's say, our ethical and mental progress is not keeping up with their technological progress. I feel like that, and we're coming to crossroads where we will be able to create. We already have created CRISPR babies. We'll be able to grow babies in artificial wombs or send humans to Mars in the next decade or so. So the future of religion it looks very bleak. But then again, we'll see probably newer religions or ideologies arise that might worship a space race or a space alien race, on Mars or something. Because a lot of these ideas come from a social political backdrop. But that's my few 2 cents on the issue.
I think just because we want to close off now and it's almost 11. Just want to say thank you so much for calling in, and we'll have you on again at another time.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this deserves like if I want to start talking about transhumanism and in context of neuroscience, we can do 2-3 videos about this and AI and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Cheers.
I might do it actually. This is a science thing instead. Yeah.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, and we have another guest, P. Hello, P.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, how are you? Can you introduce yourself? I know you're actually a member of the channel, so thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Right, I'm basically from Southeast Asia, and I've been a fan of both of you for many reasons. Now, here's my 2 short questions. Okay, so my first question is the term Allah the same generic meaning as God in other languages? So that's my first question. My second question is there any legitimacy from a doctrinal point of view that Muslim authorities in certain countries where they use their political power to ban certain Islamic terms to be used by non-Muslims? For example, Assalamu alaikum, or for example, Injil, or for example, even the very name of Allah. That's it.
Interesting question. So Allah, same as God. From what I can tell, it's definitely not the moon god. So that's one misconception that people have had for it. I mean, a lot of times I'll also admit, like some of the arguments that some atheists or some Christian apologists might make are quite absurd. But no, Allah is actually, to me, is Al-Ilah, or the God. And Christians that are of Arabic descent, when they talk about God, they say Allah. They will use words like Inshallah, Alhamdulillah, MashaAllah as well. So that's just the language, right? So people at the same time I'm pretty sure the word Allah also appears pre-Islamic in pre-Islamic literature as well. Actually, it does. Yeah, we mentioned one poem as well. So the doctrinal legitimacy for banning Islamic terms. There is this one instance where Muhammad said that don't return the salam to the Jews and the Christians. But then that would be stretched to say, like, because not all the ulama say that you can't say salam to anybody, if I look at that. But some say that it was because they were saying salam alaikum, like death upon you, only then. And there are hadith where they would push the dhimmis to the right and the right corner of the road, and they'd make them wear belts. But that's from fiqh books, the belt part or special thing. But to ban Islamic terms, the only other thing it comes to mind is the Ahmadis when they claim themselves to be Muslim and the Pakistani government says no, and so I'm not sure if there's any doctrinal legitimacy. It could be from a blasphemy perspective, where I have read in a couple of books. I think it's Qadhi's book Ash-Shifa, where if a non-Muslim says that your prophet was saying something that I don't know how to put it, but they do say that from a blasphemy perspective, you can ban them from using Islamic terms and then appropriating them in a negative way. I don't know if that makes sense, in the way like if Muslims or Islamic scholarship has used this specific term for thousands of years, then these kuffar come, they port the term over and give it a completely new derogatory meaning. Yeah, that could make sense from a blasphemy perspective. But I don't know more about that.
I know the term Allah is basically, you find it in Arabic Bibles as well, and like Gondal said, it's been used before Islam. Obviously, Abdullah, the son, the father of Muhammad, Abdullah was his name, right? He's the father of Muhammad, yet his name is servant of Allah. So how does that happen? So the name has existed. The difference what I've heard is that Allah is not neither male or female. There's no plural. So with ilah, you can make ilahain, you can have two gods, you can have a female god and male god or whatever, but Allah is just, the way, what I understand, what I believe is that Allah is the name of the high god of the pre-Islamic Arabs. The Quran says if you ask them who created the heavens and earth, they will say Allah, right? So then basically this is what they used to believe, that there was lesser gods and then there was the big god. Find the same thing with the Greeks with is it Jupiter, and the Romans with the Greeks and the Romans also had this idea of high god, and the other one's not coming to my mind right now. But anyways, they had this high god, but this high god was unapproachable, so they would actually pray to the lower gods. And the same thing happened with the pre-Islamic Arabia. They didn't feel like, because the problem with having an abstract god that you can't see and has no image, it's how do you connect with that God? So that's why human beings also had these other gods they made that once basically, right? So that's how I see it. I don't know about the banning of the Islamic terms. I think I kind of missed that question.
Yeah, he was asking if there's any actual evidence, doctrinal legitimacy for banning Islamic terms being used by non-Muslims.
No, I've never heard that. Yeah, Riyadh said it was Zeus. Thank you. Zeus and Jupiter are the two names I was thinking of. No, I haven't heard anything about banning Islamic terms. I do know there was a big cultural debate about using Khuda Hafiz versus Allah Hafiz.
Ramadan.
Yeah, Mufti Abu Layth has talked about that on his channel a bit. I don't know much about that, but yeah, there was a bit of a debate about that. So Pete, thank you so much for calling in. Because we're out of time now,
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, and do call again.
Right.
Okay, bye. Abdullah Gondal. Okay, that was great. That was an amazing show. You wanted to add anything before we wrap it up?
Yeah, so one thing I want to wrap up is about Yasir Qadhi. So I just want to touch upon what he's hiding. I'm not going to show the evidences here because they've been extensively shown in my presentation. But there are a few things. So the whole problem with the Yasir Qadhi thing is he admits that the preservation of the Quran is a cesspool of mess. And he references this one specific book.
Do you want me to share it on the screen? The one we...
I can actually just share the book.
Okay.
What happened was his Iman was really shook after this. So what I'll do is I did make posts about this. It's a Kitab al-Masahib written by Ibn Abi Dawood. And I'll just pull it up here, just to give you an extent. So this book goes into details about different companions and their codexes, and then it goes into details of variations they had. So like this one is from Abdullah bin Abbas, and what you'll see, like I'm just giving you just for the sake of it, you can access this later on, is I've highlighted in my post, like the reds are the variants and the yellows like Masaf. Now like ours, it says this. So you can see that this word Mawasim al-Hajj has been reported 1, 2, 3, 4 narrations. They used to be in the Quran, no longer found there. And this is just like this one, وَأَقِيمُوا الْحَجَّةَ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلْبَيْتِ, but in the Quran it says وَأَتِمُّوا الْحَجِّ. So it's there are variations, and this book makes some startling revelations, and this is the book that Yasir Qadhi said that shook his iman. This is an interesting one, where this was also reported in Bukhari and many other hadith, that Hafizu ala salawat wa salat al-wusta wa salat al-asr. The word wasn't there, like it says that the middle prayer, there was a hadith that says it was added later on. And we've covered this in detail. This, I have a specific post even that not only is this reported in Kitab al-Masahib, it's been Ibn Hazm, and then like 4 tafsirs, and the worst it appears in the inclusion of this phrase adds much more meaning to the verse. So I think verse 424 basically is talking about the muta. And if you were to remove this phrase ila ajlin musamma, which means till an appointed period only, the meaning of the verse becomes very ambiguous and confusing. But this is just one from Kitab al-Masahif from Ibn Abbas. Like if you were to go, like I did make posts on other people as well, but here's the one that I was talking about. So this is the list of the people that actually said ila ajlin musamma was part of there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. I've attached the screenshots. Not going into too much detail, Kitab al-Masahif has scandalous claims about Quranic preservation. So we'll just touch that, but there's Ali's codex, there's Ubay ibn Ka'b's codex, which had like 2 extra surahs or something, and there's a lot of conflicts. And there's a new version of Surah Al-Asr and whatnot, different versions where whole words, additional phrases are present. And this is all pre-Osmanic, by the way. One thing I wanted to quickly show as well was the manuscripts. Just to give you an idea of just 1 or 2 examples to give you an idea of what Qadhi's talking about. We did this presentation in detail, and in the Sana manuscript, the lower text, now Asmaillah says it's the students' notes, but actually the Marjan Putin, Benham, and Ghazi, they actually were a second paper, and they argue that no, it's not, it's actually a proper codex. And the variants reported in the physical lower text of Sana match with the variants reported, some of the variants reported in Kitab al-Masahif and such books like Al-Farist. Suyuti's Itqan fil Ulum al-Quran also has a lot on this. Just another thing was that the manipulation happens in, well, not manipulation, but the whole sentence structure is quite shifted where words are in different places and whatnot. And on the left, you see there's phrases missing and whatnot. This is the manuscript side. So what I wanted to go to, the second point was, do we have variants in the modern Quran? This is post-Usman. These are the Rivayas you see. Okay, and these are the Qurans you can buy right now. You can access these. This was 2 years ago. I used it on QuranFlash.com. There's Rivayas Afsan Asim, Duri, Susi, Watch. I've highlighted a few where you can see that they're here. The word huwa isn't even present. There's like a 3-letter word that doesn't exist in one of the things. So you ask, like, did Allah add that word? Does that variant also exist in this variant form in the heavens and whatnot? Which speech did Allah utter? Did he say huwa, or did he not say huwa, or did he actually give all sorts of variants? Right?
Yeah. Huwa right?
Yeah. Well, like these are just cursory things. But what I want to go to, just to touch on it, just to show you how extensive this argument goes. I mean, you can see these hadith where there were verses about suckling in the Quran revealed and recited by the Muslims, but no longer found there. And we were occupied, and then there's other verses. Actually, this one's funny. What I wanted to show you was this. So that suckling hadith about suckling older men, Aisha actually took that as a precedent and taught that whoever she wants to talk to, any man, she should have him breastfed. So she started sending the people to his sister, Kulthum bint Abu Bakr, and asked her to breastfeed these adult males so Aisha can talk to them. And they were like, no, you're out of your mind. Like, we're not going to do this. This is from Imam Malik's Muwatta, so it's a Sahih Hadith, and this is one of the earliest collections as well. Just to show you that there were these kind of things present in the Quran that are not found anymore, and that's the thing that Yasir Qadhi doesn't want people finding out. Just to give you another example, in Ibn Kathir's tafsir, even he says that Surah Ahzab, now we have 73 verses, but it was at a time as long as Surah Baqarah, right? And then Ibn Hassam says that this is a clearly Sahih isnad, as clear as the sun. Point being that there were hundreds of verses lost, and same thing with the verses about stoning and whatnot. So at this point, we have the manuscripts a problem. We have the Sahaba fighting each other and disagreeing with each other, and then Osman burning the Quran. Then we have post-Osmanic problems with these riwayat having variants. So every step of the way, you have these issues. And this takes away the whole allure of the Quran being some miraculously perfectly preserved book. And that's the problem. That's what Yasir Qadhi is scared and doesn't want people finding out. But at this point, the cat's out of the bag, and this has been known. I mean, Jay Smith has done a lot of work on this too. I do wanted to touch upon Mohammed Hijab deleting those 30 minutes of footage. Like, come on, guy. You can't do that. The video is still on Yasir Qadhi's channel. It just makes you seem desperate that, oh, something is actually very fishy and that this might actually shake a lot of people's iman. So let's just not talk about it or delete from my channel. It's just, like, it just makes you look bad.
Yeah, exactly. In case people don't know what we're talking about, I don't know if we actually explained it. There was the full video is an hour 45, and on Mohammed Hijab's channel, it's missing the last 30 minutes.
Initially it was there because I watched it on his channel first, and then he moved it.
Yeah, I think he got so much, lashback from all the things that was happening that he decided. He even made a statement, right, about where he kind of threw his imam under the bus there.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, one closing thing was, and this is very, very, very important, I've noticed this thing, and this is just an appeal to Muslim people, is please don't let these Dawa boys like Ali Dawa, Mohammed Hijab, or these Dawa man characters ruin the image of Islam online. Because I know, Samir knows, that the Muslim community has intellectual powerhouses, has mature people, has people that have nuance like Yasir Qadhi, Jonathan Brown. Don't follow these small YouTubers that their whole goal is to make drama and takfir and these refutation videos and then nitpick on trivialities and literally grossly misrepresent people's arguments. And the problem is that most of them are very fringe Salafi Wahhabis that are very literalist. And the thing is, they do not represent the majority of the Muslims. And that's what I wanted to point out too to a lot of our viewers, is what they end up thinking is almost all of Muslims believe like Dawa man or Ali Dawa. No, they don't. Most Muslims don't believe this stuff. The problem is that these extremists, these Madkhali Wahhabis, they're fringe, but they make the most noise. And that's why the media jumps on them. So just to give you an absurd example, like, I have never, ever seen any Muslim propagate the idea that, yeah, drinking dad's sperm as an argument against atheism is valid. It will make you look absurdly stupid. But this did happen with Dawa man. So I'm appealing to the Muslims to please reclaim this Dawa space for the sake of your own faith from these teenage style drama queens, I'd call them. And Yasir Qadhi dedicated a chunk of his lecture literally telling the Muslims, making the same points as me, that these Wahhabi kids are doing more harm to Islam than good. That's my last 2 cents. Well, actually, one last thing was, I would appreciate if most of these Muslim apologists would focus on arguments and bring or provide positive arguments for Islam rather than just trying to poke holes and attacking people and individuals and trying to make this a character assassination drama than an actual truth-seeking or going after arguments. Like, if you do feel like I make arguments that are flawed or something, yes, I'm human like everybody else. Like, if I pronounce a scholar's name incorrectly, yeah, it happens, I admit it, we move on. There's no need to spin it into memes for like months and months, right? These are the things that I'm trying to say, the immaturity and the triviality comes out a lot. But yeah, that's the end of it from my side. But I think Yasir Qadhi stream was quite explosive.
Indeed. If you guys like this show, we are thinking of doing it again. We might even start a new channel just for this show. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was really interesting to get to actually talk to some people that have been coming here for a long time. Thankfully, I did talk to John already, so John was on the channel. But some of you other guys, and I've never spoken to before, so I think it was awesome. It was good to hear from people. We didn't get any Muslims calling in today, but I think if we keep doing this on a regular basis, we'll get some actually more heated conversations than just like friendly callers. Today was all friendly callers, I think.
One disclaimer though that I want to say to people is, like, the point of this is not to humiliate you. It's like I just said, I'm not a Dawa boy. I'm not here to make cheeky comments and try to make memes about you, just realize that why we do this is because we do this for you guys. We at least feel that we don't want to see the youth getting indoctrinated, and we don't want these people growing up homophobes because the 7th century bizarre individual said this. We're coming from a place of love as well. And also understand that when you guys say that you make dua for us to return to, you're also coming from a place of sincerity. And I just want you to know that this is coming from a place of goodwill. We're not trying to, like, most of my family is Muslim. I don't hate them. I still love them. You know, most Muslims are good, nice people, and most Muslims actually are better than their books, and they are not even aware of half the stuff that's in their books. So that's one appeal as well, that if you do come on the show, don't feel shy. We're not here to humiliate you. If you like, that's not the point. We're trying here to disseminate knowledge to the public, and people have a better understanding of Islam. And yeah, from my side, that is all for today. I really enjoyed, and like Samir said, that we would love to continue this because it was very good to talk to people. And there are quite interesting ideas that came, like the idea of transhumanism, animism, and immortality. Like that could deserve a whole stream on its own.
Definitely. Thank you, everyone. And for us too, it's a good night. For the rest of you, are just waking up or in different time zones, a good morning, a good afternoon. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you again next week. If all works out well, we'll try to do this again next week. If not, maybe in 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Science Office.
Science Office.